fullback to finance extraordinaire, financial expert, financial educator, rookie to veteran, your money vehicle. Myself, Amobi Akugo, a frugal athlete. Every Wednesday, I just want to
feel
say,
like you got more resume than just that, but I appreciate the being concise.
Yeah. So I'm just happy we made it to week 2. Some things.
Week 2, bro.
Some things you start and you don't know how it's going to work. We're off Instagram Live. That the functionality wasn't good, but we're on Twitter, Periscope, however you want to call it, YouTube, Facebook, and hopefully LinkedIn. If anyone from LinkedIn's listening, can you accept myself or Jed? But that's it, man. So let's get into the topics right away. You want to take it?
Nothing's happened in the last week. Just for clarity, we're just gonna kick up some stuff. Sorry.
No, it's crazy. So starting with Pac-12, we're both Pac-12 alumni. Pac-12 came out with how you want to call it, a list of demands as articled in the Players Tribune. We are united by the players of the Pac-12, essentially asking for demands to ensure future generations of college athletes will be treated fairly. Game changer. Some of the things that they asked for: health and safety protections, COVID-19 protections, specifically mandatory safety standards, protection of all sports, preserve all existing sports by eliminating excessive expenditures and racial injustice, economic freedom, equity, name, image, and likeness, rights and representation, fair market pay rights and freedoms. And we spoke before we got live. You said Big 10 followed. UConn football canceled. Where is this all going?
So this is all going to exactly what we want to touch on and discuss, the news and moves of the modern day athlete. So as we look at this, and the Big Ten today responded with, players are the primary stakeholders in the business of college sports. That's at the beginning of their letter to not just the Big Ten. They wrote it to the NCAA, criticizing them for their lack of leadership and for the idea that each conference is on their own. We're not going to get political with this and say each state is also on their own, but this is all leading towards what a lot of people are starting to now finally accept as an inevitable. This is not going to be a positive season. This is going to be one that is forced into action. But what this action does by the Pac-12, and you tip your cap, it is the hardest exponentially to be that first man or woman through the door. Because, and you saw this 4 or 5 years ago with the Northwestern as they got shut down and they got criticized and just abolished by everybody. I look at the Pac-12, what they were able to do in the strength and the unity, and in saying, here's our voice, here's our list of demands. I would love to discuss kind of each segment of those demands individually, but
break them down.
First and foremost, I think for the student athletes, one of the biggest is the equality, the understanding of the civic engagements and the lifting up of the primary student athletes who are minorities. I think this is a no-brainer. I mean, you play Pac-12, you are a minority, I am. And is this one of those that seems like, this feels like one of those things that has been talked about for 20 years, just never kind of like firmed up and said we need it?
Yeah, for me personally, I think it's vital. Not only Black athletes are minorities, but also Native American, Latino, Asian, all minorities.
Polynesian.
Polynesian, especially in the Pac-12. You're correct about that. I think it's important to understand that, like you said, first and foremost, college athletes are the primary business stakeholders when it comes to all this. So NCAA or these leagues or these teams, using these athletes, for the betterment of their university. Obviously, the students get free education, scholarships, and things like that. But it needs to go more than, because like you're about to point out, not all of them get scholarships. Not all of them are taken care of, say an injury happens or things like that.
So I want to address that point, because neighbors are walking up to me, friends, texts, everybody is saying, haven't athletes always gotten paid like 50% of revenue? That's ridiculous. 50% is the beginning of a conversation. I want to get to the revenue part here in a second, but addressing straight on that idea of student athletes get paid. This is, they get a free education. It was 10, 20, 30 years ago where a college degree is significantly impact and change the trajectory of your life. Why? Because typically people were leaving with specialized knowledge. And I emphasize that idea of specialized knowledge. Today, the university has made it abundantly clear in the last 2 weeks with their message, but over the last 20 years, that student athletes are athletes. When you arrive on campus, nobody cares what your major is going to be. Nobody is making sure, people are making sure you go to class to get the grade to get back out on the field. We need to stop equating the idea of student athletes get an education with the value that it once held. When you look at generalized knowledge, one that is taught, not used, if you are lucky enough as a student athlete to graduate with a diploma, it's typically in a major that you're never going to use. And so therefore, it doesn't have the value it once had. Hour for hour, how much they get paid is obviously in the poverty line. But the idea that we are just standing upon this idea of the old college diploma is good enough. We need to evolve. We need to change that and look at if the student athlete is not leaving with a career, then there was no value given. And in many instances, this is the beginning of these student athletes' ability to support not only themselves, but their families. And we really need to take that into consideration as we look at the value of a college scholarship today.
No, and it's interesting because, we both came from Pac-12 schools like 10, 11 years ago. Do you think we could have done this?
Not a chance.
Yeah.
I don't think I was mature enough. You're much more mature than I am. You maybe had these thoughts.
I'm just thinking, like, I'm just like so proud of these students, just from a negotiating standpoint, understanding go-to-market strategy with their call to action and their list of demands, like to show that unity. I don't think that would have been possible coming out going to UCLA. No chance from my perspective.
And that speaks to the negotiating tactic of who has the leverage, who has the power. The Pac-12 players said, at this moment in time, USC, Notre Dame, Alabama, you do not have the power as the university. We are the product. We are the service people. We have the power. Your university, and especially the athletic department, but the entirety of the university is in a teetering position waiting for us to go to work. This is that moment where you get to unionize and say, if not now, then when? It has been a long time coming, but kudos to players being not only one conscious of the situation, but also knowledgeable enough. That being said, this is both their perfect timing. Time also, and you could talk about this, like time is their biggest nemesis. And why football players can't get better contracts or guaranteed is because there's 2,000 of us and they change every 2 years.
2 years, yep.
And so you look at college athletes and you say, bond together now, but you leaders better be looking at your freshmen, sophomores and saying, who's next?
Yeah. And it's like next man up, but now not next man up on the field. It's like next man up, who's going to lead? I think that's big.
Do you think the messaging, because of the timing, because of the leverage, do you feel like the messaging for what the movement is being positively or negatively received?
Oh, I think the timing of it is positively being received, but there's still a strong undercurrent of negative. Like you said, you're getting messages all over, like 50% or whatever, crazy. I would love to see if the SEC players come together, dominoes will fall. But it's gonna be tough, SEC country. That's their football.
That's a different world.
So,
yeah.
it's just really interesting to see, Pac-12 came, Big Ten, like you talked about this morning, before we got live, followed. UConn completely canceled their football season. So dominoes are starting to fall. It's just like, okay, how long will it last? Because there's some teams that have been, pressuring the players now, pressuring the student athletes,
Yes.
or athlete students, however you want to call them. And that's when it starts to get a little wavy.
And that's where you look at, again, the list of demands. We just talked about the kind of cultural and civic duty. That's a no-brainer. Mm-hmm. That should have been done. Let's get that number one. I would say number two is the health concerns.
All right, let's break it down.
So many student athletes graduate with ongoing issues that they need to be able to be covered. They earned them on the college campus. The college should be in favor of supporting that. 6 years, I feel like, is a great time frame. I remember a year, about a couple months after I graduated, I had staph infection in my leg that I got a bill for, that the university said, that came after you graduated, we're not responsible. And I had to trace back and show them it was a boot that I was given that gave me the infection, improving liability. But the idea, like, if I wasn't able to track that back, that this infection, because it came from an injury I got on the field, you weren't going to be responsible for that because I actually graduated, that baffled me.
It's crazy because when they're recruiting you, when these schools recruit you, like, okay, you're alumni forever, you're part of the family. Once you leave, whether it's you go pro early or graduate, very rarely, well, now it's changed, but very rarely do they invite you with open arms back. Now you're seeing it more and more. Like, now you can actually have, a scholarship that lasts over the course of a lifetime, and not just for those 4 years. Even what they ask for in their stipulations and their demands, like you said, 6-year athletic scholarships to foster undergraduate and graduate degree completion. So I think that's amazing too, because if you want to get a specialized degree, graduate, master's in finance, or your MBA or things like that, it should be covered, because not every athlete will go pro.
And you know that, we know that by a long shot. But we must start to look at these universities' commitments. You are committing to taking 4 or 5 years of our youth for service on the field, but you should be committing to what you at least advertise, which is changing the trajectory of our lives and having more of an involvement in that. Each university has their own alumni associations. A lot of them are much worse than you would think, but the idea that I, as a university, get to look a student athlete in the eye and say, the day you walk away from here is the day I have to stop worrying about you, I think that needs to evolve and start to see some of the responsibility land on them from your physical, your mental, and your career. We should be more interested in your success.
No, respect. Okay, so let's talk about
Gotta get to that money.
Yeah, we got to get to the money. Economic freedom and equity. We covered guaranteed medical expense coverage for 6 years. All right, name, image, likeness, and then fair market pay, rights, and freedoms. Our phones have been both blowing up. Distribute 50% of each sport's total conference revenue evenly among athletes in their respective sport. And another one, the freedom to secure representation, receive basic necessities from any third party, and earn money for use of our name, image, and likeness rights. Another one is ability of players of all sports to transfer one time without punishment, and additionally in case of abuse or serious negligence. And ability to complete eligibility after participating in a pro draft if player goes undrafted and forgoes professional participation within 7 days of the draft. So what do you think?
So, a kind of a thing that has been coming to fruition for the last decade are those name, image, and likeness. Too long have student athletes, I don't want to use the word exploited, but been exploited. I mean, you look at that NCAA football game from 2004. I was on there. Yeah. It didn't say Jedediah Collins, but it was me. And I never got a dime. And so it's like, hey, in no other business or marketplace would that be acceptable. So the name, image, and likeness is going to be a variety of things that are going to have to be both controlled as well as kind of arbitrarily, guided or seen. The revenue share side of it is extremely interesting, and every donor, every fundraiser, every athletic department has already come out and said, well, you might as well get rid of college sports, because if you're going to take half of the money, we can't survive.
Yeah.
What I loved about what the Pac-12 letter did was it called out very specifically this arms race for buildings.
Yeah.
We need another $50 to $100 million building every 5 years. The idea of coaches becoming multi-millionaires on our backs, that is where you start to look at it and say, okay, 50% might be too much, sure. But it began a conversation to where now we have to legitimize. You have to open the books and show me, no different than a CBA negotiation in professional sports, show me what exactly we are and are not working with. And then when you look at me and say, well, the institution needs, this 72,000 square foot, fully built out practice, then we have a conversation of, well, do we? At least it's a discussion now.
No, I think that's really important. And for the people that were saying, why would they even ask for 50? It's a simple negotiation tactic. You got to go high, because if they say we want 20, then they're going to go back to no, we can only give 15. And and it goes down. So if you start at 50, if you have to negotiate, you're going to have to come, I don't want to say to a common ground, but you start high and then ultimately get to your sweet spot.
And so there's kind of these two worlds where some people are saying, well, you can't pay the players, that won't make them professionals, blah, blah. They are already on the verge of this is semi-pro ball. And it is in all of Division I athletics. This is high dollar business. And then on the other side, you start to say, well, you're not going to pay them, so we can't make money and the department's going to go away. I've even had some people reach out to me and say, hey, okay, well then they're just going to push all of collegiate sports out, make it true amateur, true walk-on ability, and you'll have to go pay your own way to play through it. To which I thought, one, that's crazy, but that is a scenario where you just say, hey, high-tier sports is gone. But that opens the door for programs, the XFL, where you say, let's just divide and conquer, church and state. Church is a university, state is go play semi-pro ball and prepare for the NFL or whatever profession. But to split the revenue is going to happen because
it has to.
It has to. Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Well, it comes back to that value perspective. Again, you see these players as compensated when the reality is the vast majority of them are ending without any true value. And so that idea, you have to be able to, and are they all going to capture and take advantage of this opportunity? Everybody knows no, but you have to give them the opportunity.
No, I think that's really important. I think the biggest thing is, that people are worried about is okay, what about the sports outside of basketball and football? And I think with NIL, name, image, and likeness, it's the ability and the opportunity to use their likeness that is so important. And I think that it needs to be stressed. We're not expecting, rowing or soccer or badminton to, make the dollars that Reggie Bush would have made, during his time at USC. But the ability to, use their name, use their likeness to, run camps and have these opportunities is very important because, like we both know, sports isn't going to last forever. But the backing of your university, the backing of your community, you should have that ability to expand on it.
And just for the financial tip of the day, you give an 18-year-old the chance to start dipping into some compound interest, man.
Yeah, the earlier the better.
It'll be a game changer. So
go ahead.
Well, and I was going to switch subjects for a second because The financial request, I love your point. This is a strategic manipulation of start at 50%, work your way down to something that is understandable. But as this game has exponentially grown, we need to participate. What is amazing is out of this list of demands, we are just now getting to the idea of COVID. Like, that is on the list, but that is not the top. That is that blew my mind.
Yeah, that's true. It's just like they didn't even they touched on it, but they didn't touch on it. And like you said earlier, it's like using a bad situation as leverage. Because if COVID wasn't on top of mind, would this have really come about? So, sometimes things are meant to happen. And before I say that or go any further, safety and health to anyone that's been affected. But the college athletes have used this opportune time to take advantage and, get their demands sorted.
And this is the first time, because of that looming monster out there, it feels like culturally we cannot condemn these players for making these decisions. I mean, I'm looking at the baseball players starting to jump on it, the NFL players jumping on it. It is the modern day athlete. They're making business decisions. And I think collegiate players are being forced into that decision as well. But as a football coach, Washington State in particular had some issues with how the union or how this letter was going to be interpreted, how it was going to be handled. The first report is always the worst because it's based off of one person's comment. And it's been backtracked, and they're still trying to figure it out. I don't want to comment on exactly what happened because Lord knows I don't know. But the idea that a football coach is going to be forced into a situation to say, here is my team. This set of the team is making a business decision. They are standing up for something they believe in. Which reason is interesting? Because is it the COVID? Is it the medical benefits? Is it the money? Is it other sports? Whichever reason you're joining this group can be a conversation. But if it is the money, if it is the revenue share, I think as a coach, you have the right to say, well, then if you're choosing not to be a part of our team this year, I need you to not be a part of our team this year and eliminate you from the group that is going to try to go and do something. That's a horrible and a tough decision, but I do feel like as a football coach, they are not the administrator, they are not the president, they are not the NCAA. As a coach, I look at my room. If you aren't going to help us, I got to ask you to leave.
No, I mean, that's a great point, because if we're speaking about college athletes, wanting to be treated like professional athletes, paid, compensated, then that's what comes with it. You can't say we want to get paid like professional athletes, but oh wait, backtrack. So now it's like now you're negotiating beforehand. Like, okay, what are the stipulations before I come to your school? Am I going to be getting this? Like, when am I playing? What's the salary look like? Things like that. I'm not sure if salary would be a part, but these are things that you got to be considered. And if you're not performing, coach has every right to you look at other options. I mean, they already do, but now that pressure is heightened because now they are compensating you based on, your talent and your performance on the field. So that's what comes with it, I think.
No, you are absolutely right. And the last kind of piece that I want to touch and this is truly a question for you is, as football players are looked at in a different light, and it is one thing or another, it's whatever. The reality is they are the revenue generator. And I think it is really neat that they, at least in the Pac-12, I think the Big Ten piece was much more directed at Corona and at its stipulations for proceeding with this season. But the Pac-12 one is a little bit more altruistic, bigger picture. As a sport that, and in the Pac-12, you guys probably could support yourselves, but do you see it as a one for all for one in how college sports will move forward?
It's tough because, you saw Stanford recently, suspend or terminate, some of their other sports. And those other sports, those are sports that they highlighted in the past, like in terms of national championships and different things like that. So Football, basketball, those are the first dominoes. If I'm looking at UCLA, the school I went to, women's soccer is very big. Women's
Very big.
volleyball is very big. Women's softball, but still, is football, basketball is like leading the charge. If they can stick together, there's always situations where it's, okay, we'll take care of you guys, the football team, and then everyone else is left in the haystack. So hopefully it doesn't come to that. And I think if the football and the basketball and like the big leaders can stay firm, stay united, then it will help the whole group in charge.
And stay united. I mean, Amobi, this is historic. This is the first of its kind. Do you see this group again? Why it's so hard is I don't know, but there's 12 universities in the Pac-12. I think there's 12 universities in the Big Ten, and there's 10 in the Big 12. It all got kind of funny numbered now, but do you see the capacity and the compassion for players to truly say, I am going to make a stance that every person who protests, every person who holds out and supports these causes is doing it for the future? They're not doing it for the now. They're doing it for beyond themselves. Do you feel college athletes will be able to maintain that kind of mindset?
It's going to be tough. I think if COVID sparks back up, then they can. But if teams are playing and there's games going on, I think you'll start seeing it. You have too much top talent that have been using sports as a vehicle to support their families and get out. And if their games are starting to be played and they're not playing and they're losing their value or whatever, it's going to be tough. But I think I'm thinking from my mindset, 10 years ago, and looking at it now, like you said, the modern athlete is new and improved, and they understand their leverage, and there's many ways to the top of the mountain. So I'm rooting for them. I think they can get it done. I think if they have good leadership, they'll figure it out for sure.
All right. You want to do our athlete of the week?
Yeah. So let's get into athlete of the week. Justin Forsett, you're a football NFL alumni. Give us the rundown.
He's a Pac-12 guy, Pac-10 back in the day, Berkeley Bear. He went on to play 9 years in the NFL, which in and of its own right is an incredible feat. He had a product featured on Shark Tank called the Shower Pill. And what was really cool is, as every athlete does, you train. You're always on the go. You're always on the move. And some people had the luxury of having a shower in their facility, but most of us didn't. And so they had a wipe, and it was a shower on the go wipe that killed 99% of germs. I got to imagine right now people are begging for these kinds of wipes. You know what I mean? So yeah. What I love and why we highlight him is this modern day athlete. He transitioned. He saw a niche and a nuance he understood. He knew athletes. He knew how we trained. He developed and was a part of a company that developed a product. But they didn't stop there. They've just rebranded, repositioned, and he has become a true entrepreneur and businessman. And they have built a company called Hustle Clean. That this storyline to me is just everything. Not only do they come out and say we have a mission first, we inspire, empower people to live their best lives, but he also understands from his upbringing, from how and who he's communicated with in the athletic world, they want to give back. I've already given back to Flint, Michigan, Hurricane Harvey in Texas, Hurricane Maria in Puerto Rico. And you look at that as a football player. I created a product, I created a business, I'm impacting my community. That is the bridge of the modern day athlete, brother.
No, that's great. And he evolved, for him to rebrand, I think it's amazing. And then, make sure you check it out. They're all over Target stores nationwide, I believe, correct?
They are. They have 1,000 stores, and it is truly just an impressive thing. It's just the evolution. The last point, and this one to me is probably the most important because I don't know the answer, but I believe one of these demands from the Pac-12 and other conferences are going to be the removal and the banning of liability waivers. As a student athlete, you have to sign those, even related to COVID. I will
Yeah.
be very interested to see kind of where that little nuance goes.
That's good. That's good. That's good. Well, that's it. We ran over time, but this is our second episode. Every Wednesday, 12:30 Pacific time. Sorry, tongue twister. Me and Jed live and direct bank shots. Thank you guys for tuning in. This will be repurposed on YouTube and then on audio, both of our platforms. But yeah, you guys make sure you guys can send in questions beforehand, things like that. And we got Brandon
Yes.
from Facebook. Thank you so much for tuning in. That's one of those.
Appreciate you.
Yeah,
Ask a question. We'll answer it next week, brother.
Yeah, he's one of the good guys. One of the good guys.
One of the few.
But yeah, that's it. Catch you guys later.